After my husband's death in an accident, my sister invited me to her son's birthday. But when I arrived at the party, she publicly announced that the baby was my husband's and that she needed half of his $50 million inheritance. I asked, "Are you serious?" When she said yes, I couldn't control my laugh because my husband was. Life can change in a second. 1 minute, I was 33, happily married, and planning my future. The next minute, I was a widow, looking at cremation options because my husband's body was too damaged for an open casket. That's what happened to me, Jessica. 7 months ago, my husband Adam died in a terrible car crash. Since then, I've been drowning in sadness and trying to figure out how to live in this new, painful life. The first few weeks felt like a dream. I was busy with funeral plans, getting so many calls, and spending sleepless nights. If my parents hadn't taken over most of the funeral work, I don't know how I would have handled it. "Jessica, honey, we've arranged everything with the funeral home," my mom said softly, more gently than I'd ever heard her speak. "You just focus on yourself right now." A support group for people who lost their loved ones became my safe place. Every Friday evening, I sat in a circle with others who understood the deep pain in my chest. "Some days are harder than others," I said in one meeting. My voice, so quiet. "Sometimes I wake up and forget he's gone just for a second." Rachel, who had lost her husband 3 years ago, gently held my hand. "That's normal, sweetie. Grief comes in waves," she said kindly. As time went by, I had to deal with other things. Adam had made sure I'd be okay financially. We had a house in the suburbs, an apartment in the city, and a good amount of money in the bank. I could have left my job at the marketing firm, but the thought of staying home all day alone scared me. So I chose to work part-time, just enough to keep myself busy. The biggest surprise was how my relationship with my parents changed. Growing up, I always felt like they cared more about my younger sister Laura. They never missed her dance shows or school plays, while my good grades barely got a well done. But after Adam died, something between us changed. I offered to help my parents by sending them $3,000 every month. I didn't even think twice. Our weekly dinners at their house had become something I looked forward to. Mom would make her famous pot roast, Dad would pour some wine, and we'd talk about all kinds of things. For the first time in my life, I felt like they were really paying attention to me. "Jessica, tell us more about that new project you're working on," Dad would ask, actually showing interest in my job for once. "The marketing campaign is going well," I'd reply, enjoying the feeling of being seen. "My boss thinks it might bring in a few new clients." But everything changed the night my sister Laura came over for dinner. She walked in, 8 months pregnant, and just like always, the whole room turned its attention to her. Laura had been living in a small apartment on the other side of town. I hadn't seen her since Adam's funeral. "Laura, sweetie, sit here," Mom said, rushing to her side and gently moving me aside to make space for her favorite daughter. "Do you need another pillow? Are your feet swollen?" Just like that, I faded into the background again. It was like I became invisible. Their focus was all on Laura and her pregnancy. That old feeling of being ignored came back, and it hurt. I thought I had moved past it, but it returned so quickly. "So, who's the father?" I asked during dinner, trying to be part of the conversation. "Have you told him about the baby?" Laura's face changed. She looked annoyed. "That's my business," she said sharply, while pushing food around on her plate. "I don't need to tell everyone about my personal life." Mom quickly defended her. "Jessica, don't ask questions. Your sister doesn't owe anyone an explanation." I couldn't help but notice how different that was from how they treated me. When I was trying to get pregnant through fertility treatments, they always asked questions, gave advice I didn't ask for, and wanted constant updates. But with Laura, they respected her privacy without a second thought. Later, during another dinner, I asked again, "But how are you going to manage everything by yourself? Babies cost a lot." Laura waved her hand like it was nothing. That usual smug smile appeared on her face. "Don't worry about me or my baby. We won't need anything from anyone," she said confidently. "I've got it all under control." I should have paid more attention to that smile. I'd seen it too many times before. Laura was always starting something new, only for it to fall apart soon after. There was the smoothie business that lasted 3 weeks, the life coach training she never finished, and that time she lost 4 months' rent on a crypto investment. "Trust me," she said, patting her baby bump with a look of confidence that should have warned me. This time, everything is going to go exactly how I planned." Dad looked at her like she'd just found the cure for a major disease. "That's my girl," he said proudly. "She always finds a way to land on her feet." I took another bite of pot roast, trying to swallow the all too familiar feeling of being second best. Some things just never change, I thought, as I watched my parents hang on to every word Laura said. The call from Laura came on a Friday morning. I was at my desk, looking over some marketing reports when my phone lit up with her name. I almost didn't answer it. Our talks were usually short and a bit awkward, but something made me pick up this time. "Jessica," she said in that overly sweet voice she only used when she wanted something. "I'm having my baby shower next weekend at Mom and Dad's. I'd really love it if you could come." I didn't expect that. The last real conversation we had was at Adam's funeral, and even then, she seemed distracted and uncomfortable. "Are you sure?" I asked, not able to hide how surprised I was. I could count on one hand the number of times Laura had ever invited me to anything. "Of course," she laughed, though it didn't sound natural. "You're my only sister. It wouldn't feel right without you. Plus, I have something special planned." Something in her voice made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling away. "I'll be there," I said, already thinking of gift ideas. Maybe this was her way of fixing things between us. The next Sunday, I showed up at my parents' house, carrying 2 nicely wrapped gifts, a fancy baby monitor and a handmade baby blanket. Even though Laura and I didn't always get along, this was still my future niece or nephew. The house looked like it had been hit by a pastel storm. Pink and blue balloons were everywhere, streamers hung from every wall, and in the middle of the room stood a giant diaper cake decorated like it belonged at a fancy party. Trust Laura to make this into a big event. Half the town seemed to be there. Aunt Carolyn was chatting with her daughters, Mom's bridge club friends had taken over the sofa, and Laura's old college roommate stood by the punch bowl, giggling over old stories. "Time for games," Laura called out, walking through the crowd in a beautiful maternity dress that probably cost more than I paid in rent. She looked amazing, but something about the way she smiled made me uneasy. Her eyes kept meeting mine from across the room, holding my gaze a little too long. We played all the usual baby shower games, guessing how big her belly was using string, picking a date for the baby's arrival, and the silly game with melted chocolate bars and diapers. I ended up winning the belly measuring game, and Laura didn't seem happy about it. Throughout the party she kept glancing at me in a strange way, like she was waiting for something. After the gift opening started, she made a big show of reacting to every little baby item. Each onesie and gadget received more excitement than the last. Then she got to my gifts. She held up the blanket and gently touched the design with her fingers. After a moment, she tapped her glass for attention. The room went quiet. My heart suddenly started beating faster, and I didn't know why. The air felt thick, like something was about to happen. It was getting hard to breathe. "I want to thank everyone for coming today," Laura began, one hand resting on her big belly. "But there's something else I need to say. I think it's time everyone knows who the father of my baby is." My heart started beating faster. Laura looked straight at me, and in that moment, I already knew. Even before she said the words, I could feel it. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. "The father," she said loudly, her voice filling the now silent room, "is Adam Chastain, Jessica's late husband." The world around me felt like it tilted. Through the loud ringing in my ears, I could still hear people gasping and whispering. Aunt Carolyn covered her mouth in shock. Laura's college friends huddled together, whispering quickly. But what hurt me the most was seeing the calm look on my parents' faces. They weren't surprised. They already knew. Before I could even begin to understand what was happening, Laura kept talking. Her voice was full of pride as she turned to face me. "Since this baby is Adam's only child, I have the right to half of everything he left behind. That means the house, the apartment, the money. My child deserves their father's inheritance." Everything started spinning. I grabbed the back of a chair to stop myself from falling. Then, my mom and dad stepped forward and stood on either side of Laura, like they were protecting her. "Jessica," Dad said, using his serious tone, "you need to do what's right. Your nephew deserves what belongs to him." Somehow, I found my voice, though it came out rough and dry. "You're lying. All of you are lying. Adam would never do this." Laura's smile changed. It turned cold and mean. She pulled out her phone. "Then, how do you explain this?" She held up the screen and my whole world shattered again. There they were, Adam and Laura, in each other's arms, kissing in what looked like a hotel room. Another picture showed them holding hands at a restaurant I didn't recognize. "He loved me," Laura said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He was going to leave you for me. We were planning to tell everyone." Then she stopped. Her eyes filled with tears, and they began running down her cheeks. But then the accident happened, and all our plans disappeared. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. My body moved on its own. I grabbed my purse, pushed past the crowd of shocked guests, and stumbled out to my car. I heard Mom calling after me, but I was already backing out of the driveway. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept playing those pictures over and over, trying to understand them. The photos at the restaurant must have been during those business dinners Adam always talked about. The hotel? Probably. One of the trips he said were for work. My phone started buzzing the moment I walked through the front door. Laura was sending me message after message, dozens of them. They were screenshots of her chats with Adam. "I don't love her anymore. I haven't for a long time. We'll tell everyone after the divorce. You're the only one I want. I can't wait to start our life together." One message after another popped up on my screen, and each one felt like a fresh cut to my heart. The dates on the messages showed their conversations went back for months. All this time, while I was going through painful fertility treatments, thinking I was the reason we couldn't have kids, my husband and my sister were planning a new life without me. That night, I couldn't sit still. I walked around my house, touching Adam's things, looking at the photos on the walls, wondering if any of it had been real. Had our whole life together been a lie? At 6 a.m. sharp, the phone rang again. It was my parents. I let it ring a few times before picking up. "Jessica, you need to be reasonable about this," Dad said, not even bothering to say hello. "The sooner you agree to give Laura her share of the inheritance, the easier this will be for everyone." His cold and confident voice made me angry. Easier for who? For Laura? For them? For all of us, Mom added. I realized they had me on speakerphone. "You don't want this to get messy, dear." I barely got the words out. "When did you know about them?" There was silence. A pause that said more than words could. Finally, Mom spoke. We've known for a while. Adam told us about 7 months before the accident." Her words hit me like a punch. 7 months. They knew for 7 months. And during that time, they let me cry at Adam's funeral while they pretended to comfort me. They kept taking the money I sent every month, even though they knew what he and Laura had done. Traitors. The word felt cold and final. "All of you." I ended the call and blocked their numbers. My hands were shaking when I opened my banking app, but I didn't think twice. I stopped the monthly payment I had been sending them. If they needed money, they could go ask their beloved Laura. 3 weeks passed, full of missed calls and unread messages. Then I got an email from Laura. She said she would sue me if I didn't give her half of everything Adam left behind. She used the word voluntarily, but it felt more like a threat. I couldn't bring myself to reply. I couldn't even think about Adam's betrayal, or how many people must have seen them together while I stayed in the dark. Things at work got worse too. The whispers started. Some coworkers gave me sad looks. Others tried to hide their smiles. I could feel them talking behind my back. Then Larry, my boss, and one of the only real friends I had left, called me into his office. I broke down right in the middle of a client meeting. Larry, my boss, looked at me kindly and said, "Take some time off. Paid or unpaid. Whatever works for you. Your job will still be here when you're ready to come back." I nodded, feeling thankful, and packed up my things that same day. The next few weeks all felt the same. I barely left the house. I had my groceries delivered, didn't answer the door when it rang, and spent hours looking at old photos, trying to see what signs I had missed. Every happy memory now felt fake. Every moment from my marriage was ruined by the truth that Adam had been living a secret life with my own sister. Then I found out through Facebook, Laura had given birth to a baby boy. In the photo, she was smiling in her hospital bed. Our parents were standing beside her, looking proudly at their new grandson. The baby was wrapped in the cream-colored blanket I had made for her baby shower. It felt like a slap in the face. I closed the app quickly, but not before I saw the baby's name, Adam Jr. A week later, a thick envelope came in the mail. My hands shook as I opened it. I already knew what it was, a court notice. Laura was suing me for half of everything Adam had left me. She was saying her son deserved his father's inheritance. The legal letter was cold and clear. She wanted the house, half the money, and part of the downtown apartment. I spent 4 days looking for the right lawyer before I chose Paul Heyman. He had a great reputation for handling difficult inheritance cases. "Miss Chastain," he said, flipping through papers on his desk, his face calm but serious, "I have to be honest. Your sister has strong proof that she and your husband had a long-term relationship. There are text messages, photos, and even witness statements, including from your parents." He paused to adjust his glasses. In cases like this, proof of a close relationship and a biological child usually makes the court feel sympathy for the child's side. I was still trying to understand this horrible news when my phone rang that evening. It was an unknown number. "Hello," I answered. "Is this Jessica Chastain?" a woman's voice asked. I didn't recognize it, but something about the way she spoke felt oddly familiar. "I'm Joyce Meyer, Adam's mother." The world felt like it tilted. I grabbed the kitchen counter for balance. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Adam told me he was an orphan. He said his parents died when he was little. He said he grew up in foster care." "I'm afraid that was another lie," she said, her voice bitter, but not cruel. "Would you meet with me? There are things you need to know, things that might help you." We agreed to meet the next morning at a small cafe downtown, a neutral place. I got there early, my stomach full of nerves. I ordered a coffee and waited. I couldn't even drink my coffee. My hands were shaking so badly, I almost dropped the cup when she walked in. The way she looked shocked me. Adam had her eyes, her smile, even the same graceful way of moving. She walked just like him. "I was at the funeral," she said, after we sat down in a quiet booth, far from anyone who might hear us. "I sat in the back row, wearing a black dress and veil. I couldn't bring myself to speak to you then." Adam and I hadn't talked in years. Suddenly, I remembered her, the quiet woman who left before the service ended. At the time, I was too deep in my grief to think much about her. But now, the memory was clear. The elegant woman in black standing away from the crowd, her face hidden behind a dark veil. "Why are you telling me all this now?" I asked, trying not to sound too doubtful. After everything I'd learned about Adam, it was hard to trust anyone who had been close to him. Joyce reached into her bag and pulled out a worn manila envelope. The edges were bent, like it had been carried around for a while. "Because I heard what your sister is trying to do," she said. "And because even with everything that happened, I don't want another woman to suffer because of my son's lies." Her fingers were shaking as she slid the envelope across the table. I opened it slowly, my hands trembling too. Inside were medical records from Hartford General Hospital dated 11 years ago, just a year before Adam and I got married. As I read the paper, I felt the blood drain from my face. Complete azoospermia. Permanently sterile. No chance of natural conception. The medical words hit me like punches. Adam had taken this test when he was 26. He was heartbroken after getting those results, Joyce said quietly. It was one of the last things we ever talked about before we stopped speaking. I couldn't say a word. All those years I had spent trying to get pregnant, going to doctor after doctor, taking hormone shots, crying, blaming myself, it had all been a cruel lie. Adam had known he couldn't have children, but he never told me. When the court day finally came, the room was full. Laura sat in the front row, gently holding baby Adam Jr. Our parents were right next to her, looking proud and protective. She was dressed like the perfect grieving woman, simple black dress, barely any makeup, and a sad, practiced expression on her face. When she took the stand, she played the role well. Her eyes sparkled with tears as she talked about her deep love for Adam. "All I want is what's fair for my son," she said, her voice shaking. "He deserves his father's legacy." My lawyer, Mr. Heyman, stayed calm and waited until she was done with her performance. He began speaking. "Your Honor, I'd like to show proof that Miss Ramsey's whole claim is false." He walked up to the judge and handed over the hospital records. The judge looked through the papers, her face showing no emotion. Laura's lawyer quickly stood up, arguing about where the documents came from and if they were real. Laura's calm face finally cracked. "Those papers are fake," she yelled, holding the baby tightly. "She made them up to steal my baby's inheritance." But Mr. Heyman stayed calm. "Your Honor," he said, "these records show that Mr. Chastain was not able to have children. So we are asking for a DNA test to prove who the real father is." Laura smiled like she had won. "That's not possible," she said. "Adam was an orphan, and his body was cremated. There's no one to test." "Actually," Mr. Heyman replied, turning toward the crowd, "I'd like to introduce Joyce Meyer, Adam Chastain's biological mother." Joyce stood up, and a wave of surprise filled the courtroom. Even from my seat, I could see Laura's face turn pale. "I'm willing to take a DNA test," Joyce said clearly, "to find out if this baby is really my grandson." The judge nodded. "A DNA test is ordered. We'll meet again once the results are in." Laura looked like she was about to faint. Her skin was pale, and she swayed in her seat. Our mother rushed to hold her up, giving me a hateful look. But for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a small bit of hope. The courtroom was quiet as the judge opened the envelope with the DNA test results. Laura sat stiffly in her chair, the baby sleeping peacefully in her arms, unaware of everything going on. "The results clearly show," the judge said in a steady voice, "that there is no genetic connection between the child and Mrs. Joyce Meyer. That means Adam Chastain is not the father of this child." The whole room gasped. Laura's face fell and she started crying. Her mascara ran down her face. "Miss Ramsey," the judge said, her voice now strict, "do you want to explain why you lied to this court?" Laura hugged the baby tightly. Her voice was weak. "I was seeing more than one man at the time. When Adam died and was cremated, I thought no one would ever find out. He had money, and I needed it." "So you tried to cheat your own sister?" the judge asked sharply. "You even used your parents to help with this lie." "I just wanted my baby to have a good life," Laura whispered. But this time, her act didn't work. Even our parents looked shocked, finally understanding just how far she had gone. The judge gave her ruling right away. "This court rules in favor of the defendant, Jessica Chastain. All of Laura Ramsey's claims to the estate are dismissed permanently. Miss Ramsey, you're lucky Mrs. Chastain hasn't taken legal action for attempted fraud." Outside the courthouse, my parents walked up to me. Mom was crying, and Dad looked older than I had ever seen him. I had never seen Dad look so old. "Jessica, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching for my hand. "We didn't know Laura was lying. We want to make things right. We've been having a hard time since you stopped sending the monthly money." I held up my hand to stop her. "Don't. Just don't." Then I took out my phone, blocked their numbers right there in front of them, and walked away without looking back. Joyce was waiting by my car. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. To my surprise, I laughed. "You know what? I think I am. Or I will be." I took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about that downtown apartment Adam left me. I never really liked it. Too many memories. But maybe you'd like it." Her eyes widened. "Jessica, no. I couldn't. Please," I said firmly. "You gave me my life back with those medical records. Let me give you something in return." A week later, I handed her the keys. She started crying and hugged me tightly. "I never thought I'd have a daughter," she whispered. That was 4 months ago. My old family still tries to contact me through distant relatives and mutual friends, but I've cut those ties too. Laura even sent a letter saying she was sorry, that she had changed and needed help with the baby. I threw it away without opening it. Instead, I now have weekly dinners with Joyce. We're slowly getting to know each other, sharing stories about Adam, the good and the bad. She's helping me understand that even though Adam wasn't the man I believed he was, that doesn't erase all the happy moments we shared. Yesterday, I finally packed up the last of Adam's things. Joyce helped me donate some of it to charity, and put the rest in storage. While we worked, she told me stories about Adam as a little boy before all the lies began. Somehow, it helped. It made it easier to believe that a good part of him once existed. I'm not ready to date again yet, but I've started living my life. I've gone back to work full-time, joined a hiking club, and I'm even planning my first solo vacation. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I barely recognize the woman staring back at me. Life has a funny way of surprising you. I lost the family I was born into, but I found a new one I never expected. It's not the life I planned, but maybe it's the life I was meant to have all along.